Hello, it is the Anfield Wrap. I am Neil Atkinson. In front of me, I have Martin Fitzgerald, Steve Graves, and Ben Johnson. It has been, Steve, a relentless campaign by Liverpool Football Club, PGMOL, Fenway Sports Group, the Premier League, UEFA, Sky Sports, BT, especially Des Kelly and Mouth of the South, Jake Humphries, the injury fake gods, Matt Hancock, and COVID to break my spirit. They have put in week after week after week trying to break my spirit, and I think yesterday was the day they finally got me.
Yeah, and I think Joe Willock's January move from Arsenal to Newcastle was an unlikely element in the whole butterfly effect of all of this that would ultimately be your undoing, Neil. But yeah, I guess that's sometimes the way it works. Everything has conspired against Liverpool, but most of all, Liverpool have conspired against Liverpool, and there's all kinds of factors coming to a head in not just a result and not just an outcome, but a chain of events from 90 plus 1 onwards that is just hard to, down to the fact that we're playing more than 90 plus 4 because within past the 90 we had firstly a Milner injury and then a disallowed goal. You couldn't write it. You wouldn't write it. Why would you want to? Because it's not particularly entertaining or edifying or anything. It's just rubbish. And it is just there's no real hiding place. There's no real it's a once every 2 seasons result that is very similar to ones that we've had week in and week out for quite a long time now. And it's becoming really, really hard to find any particular answers or particular solutions. Sometimes a solution is really staring you in the face, and aside from definitely Jordan Henderson and definitely Virgil van Dijk being available for an extended period of time to play games for Liverpool, I haven't got a huge number of solutions or bright spots to offer up at the minute.
Martin, I feel, as I say, I've got nothing left to give. I will walk alone. At the end of the storm, I will get wet. That Lark can go fuck itself. This is the current state of play. It is just body blow after body blow, coming from all sorts of different directions. The Willock equaliser, which made it feel like a defeat. I referred to it as a defeat when I saw Samantha yesterday after the game. And she went, I thought it finished a draw. And I was like, oh, yeah, I suppose it did. It felt like an absolute crushing blow.
It's like watching a TV show that you used to love with characters that you used to love, and everyone's turned into a bit of a cunt. And it's difficult to watch that. And if this was The Walking Dead, you'd have fucked it off by now and started watching something else. One of the last times I saw Ben, we sort of, joked about that a kind of deal was done with the devil to win the league, and you had to accept all manner of things that happened to you since. And that was at some point last year. It's just got progressively worse ever since. And it's not a TV show, so you still have to keep on watching it because you support the team and you always will. But God, it's hard. It's really difficult. And to watch it in isolation in your homes or just with a couple of mates, it's just, and to just see the emptiness of that stadium and what's going on. What is it now? 1 win in 10. It's unbelievable compared to the record that it was. The only analogy I can think of in terms of taking fans, away from talent is, when the Beatles stopped touring. They were going for 9 years. They were good mates. They stopped playing in front of crowds within under 3 years. They hated each other, and that was the end of that. And we're sort of at the let it be stage. Just tell me what to play and I'll play it. And it's a bit grim, but what can you do?
I mean, what can you do, Ben? We'll come on to that within this show. in general, if there has been a deal with the devil done, that's absolutely fine. Can I just have saw all the deal terms in advance, please? And I still would have signed up. I'd just quite like to know what it is that's coming around the next corner at this sort of stage of things. It would almost be easier if we were a bit shitter, frankly. The fact that they create all the opportunities that they create, the fact that they're still capable in spurts in all these games recently where they've dropped points of pulling teams apart actually makes it harder. If they were just a side that all of a sudden had to sit on the edge of their own penalty area, hoof it clear, win some headers, if they were effectively a latter-day Houllier side, because currently they're getting latter-day Houllier results, but they're not a latter-day Houllier side. I watched that side and I could see how awful it was. This isn't that. It just isn't that, but this is literally the way this is in terms of the way the results go. This is reminiscent of that final Gerard Houllier season now. Yeah,
it is. It's not... It hasn't got the same feeling. I agree with you. It hasn't got the same feeling in terms of, that felt like the whole thing had come to an end. That Houllier last season felt like, look, he, as sad as it is, he's got to leave in the summer. This doesn't feel like that in relation to even this squad of players. Never mind the manager, that's not up for consideration. But even this squad of players. But I think they do need the end of the season. They just need it. It's just ridiculous, this. And I think Guardiola said a while ago, and it was really interesting. Guardiola said after Liverpool, had that tricky spell, we sort of come out of it a little bit now. But Guardiola said football's a mindset at times. Football's a mindset. Liverpool are doing 85, 90% of the things in a game right. But what they're not doing is what they were brilliant at last year. And that little difference, it's very similar to what's happened to City last year, but that little difference where you have chance after chance after chance, you don't convert it. As soon as that happens, like everyone watching that game yesterday knew what was going to happen. Just once half time come, you knew, and you hope that it wouldn't. But Liverpool have got a couple of problems. One, they look goosed. So if they don't put a game to bed, then last 20 minutes, they look knackered. They look there for the taking. Two, they can't defend a 1-0 lead no more. It's not in them. Whereas they built a title-winning team and a team that got 100 points by being ahead in the game and saying, that's fine, we'll close this out. They haven't got that now. So they can't rely on that. And also, to add insult to injury, we just turned into a basket case going forward. It's ridiculous what's happening. And it's almost, as you say, it'd be well easier to stomach if we were just shite and were scrapping. And, that season when, that season under Klopp when we got Champions League and from our race was running early January. We were knackered.
16-17. They were hooked from February onwards.
We were knackered, but we scrapped and fought and battled. Emre Can scored an overhead kicks from the edge of the box at Watford for a 1-0 win in a game where we weren't very good.
Coutinho and Firmino both come on at Stoke, having not started because they're shattered.
Yeah, and we find a way. We were a much worse side then. The problem being now is we're still 90% of an excellent side, but the thing that we're missing is steel in the defensive area and fucking ruthlessness in the other one, and we haven't got it. And you look at what you do. I almost wonder if it just needs a restart of the season. Season starts again. We get some crowds in. The players can just say, that was mad last year, weren't it? And everyone goes, yeah. And you start again.
On the chances, Steve, we'll start with the chances and we'll end up with the other stuff. What's difficult is they miss good ones. They get into positions for good ones, make them worse, but still get a shot away. They get in positions to make good ones and squander those positions. And across the board on those three things, it isn't as simple as the shot. It isn't as simple as the pass before the shot or the piece of play before the shot. And it isn't even as simple as the pass before the pass. All of these things now look like they're not working. The manager said something about this, about sort of being better and more ruthless with the ball in terms of all aspects, not just literally kicking it in the goal after the match. And I think this is in part what he means. Yeah,
almost any time when there is time to think, now Liverpool do an awful lot of thinking, and then I agree they make a good chance worse. Mane particularly, I think a couple of times, he just tries to drag the ball into a position where I suppose it is to try and make it into a 100% chance, and he ends up taking it from 95% to 10%. And Jota as well, guilty of that a couple of times. Salah as well. Salah's goal is purely the result of technique and instinct, and all of that is absolutely world class. And then any time that there's any degree of thought that has to go in, there's one in the second half when Salah he's kind of in and he snatches at it to the near post when he probably should look to pass. Every time it's the wrong decision, and I think this has been throughout the whole of this terrible run. Burnley's the game that breaks the cycle of the home record, and Divock Origi has the entirety of the Burnley half to run into one-on-one with the goalkeeper after a terrible mistake and hits the bar. And that in every one of these games where we've been really poor, even though we haven't created loads of chances, we've missed a really early good one, and that's really set the tone. And then we've taken one within sort of 3-4 minutes this time, and just not been able to build on it, not at all. I think if I'm the front three, I'm entitled to say it might be nice if just now and again it looked like one of the midfielders might score. Or it might be quite nice if just now and again we got a cheap one from a corner and it wasn't just all on us, because it's been a long time, and I know we're going to come on to talk about corners and stuff as well. But it might just be nice for someone else to chip in somewhere. I think the only one who even looks like it's Milner. He looks like settling in the penalty area, and he hasn't scored from this season either. So
well, just on that though, Steve. From I think that's fair that at times that the three attackers could turn around, but yesterday they were 4 attackers. There was a fourth one on there. It wasn't the idea that the onus is just falling on 3 footballers to stick the ball in the back of the net. And if you are going to play 4 attackers, and it's not 4-2-3-1, it's 4-2-4. If you are going to play 4-2-4, putting the corners aspect to one side for a minute, you do need your midfield too to be pretty responsible. You can't add to that with somebody bombing on.
No, you're putting more pressure on those midfielders to do more of the sort of midfield work and go backwards, of course. Yeah, particularly when it's Wijnaldum and Thiago. It wasn't even Fabinho, Henderson necessarily as the two. I totally take that on board. I think it's consistently been difficult for the manager when he's had 4 threats to get them on the pitch. We saw it with Coutinho. It never quite, when it gelled, it looked amazing, but it didn't gel for a consistent period of time or even during games. They'd sort of come on and off the boil. And I think, what the first 55 or whatever it was minutes, 60 minutes of the game was out of control. Even though Newcastle weren't very good, they were always just about potentially able to get in, and the manager does the sensible thing in bringing Milner on, and in many ways, you look at it, that's kind of textbook. The textbook go-to thing to do would be to calm that game down at 1-0. Liverpool successfully do that, but what they don't do is keep making those chances. The one thing that we seem to have stopped doing, or perhaps it's just literally personnel, is I think the last few seasons in that game, you're seeing, and the name I'm going to say, but you're seeing Joel Matip come on the pitch on 85, 86 for someone, and Liverpool go, we've got an extra centre half now. So he didn't look to do that with Reece Williams on the bench or any of the options. We end up with one centre half on the pitch really by trade at the end of the game, rather than having that attitude that what we have we hold. We don't seem able to put the hammer down and get more than what we have, and we don't also seem able to try to look to hold on and have that mindset.
The other thing he doesn't do, Steve, which he's done in the past, and I always say it and people never like it, but I think he actually would have liked to have either had the third centre-back option or the idea of, right, okay, it's now a front two, one's Mo Salah and the other one's Divock Origi. Mm-hmm. And, the idea of just someone to be big and hit channels. And people don't like Divock chat for a variety of reasons, but the manager is the manager that he is, and I think part of what he would quite like to have in that instance is an escape valve, which is a fella who's 6'4" and pacey, which at least pins the opposition back and gives Liverpool something to hit and build on.
Yeah, and this I guess plays into how many of the squad players he just seems to have lost almost total faith in to even do a job for him off the bench in any situation other than we desperately need to score a goal against Real Madrid. Or we desperately need to score a goal in this situation where I'm suddenly going to rely on you, but I'm not relying on you to start games against Newcastle at home. I'm not relying on you to start what should be routine games, which is kind of what you're there for as a squad player. And I think there is, I don't know if it's just an element of he doesn't really want to, he's gone to the well team many times, but then, Origi comes on Arsenal and does a good job. And I think that, there's a number of footballers. No, I'm not necessarily just saying Origi directly, but there's players there that he doesn't turn to off the bench. That it feels now that he's whittled down to a relatively small core of lads that he backs, perhaps in terms of character and mentality and all of those things. Except, as I say, when it's almost like, well, we've tried everything else now. We'll give you a go when we really need you to deliver, rather than actually give you a chance to just play in this team for a little while and settle in. And all of these things can compound one another, don't they? I mean, there isn't a right answer to that, and it wasn't wrong to bring James Milner on, but I think we might have scored more. We might have scored the second because he just might have created a few more of those chances and taken one. And the manager would say, "Well, we weren't taking them," so I went to do the sensible thing, and the sensible thing is to hold on for 1-0, and Liverpool are just wholly incapable of doing that.
The set piece question, Martin, Steve mentions it there. Right the way through the game, Liverpool get a raft of corners, and the corners more than free kicks. On corners, to me, I'm almost like corners feel they feel like just gentle punctuation through a football match. We're doing absolutely nothing from them, less than nothing. I almost felt yesterday like corners were good news for Newcastle. A Liverpool corner was like, right, okay, there'll be a point where we cleared it. There'll be a point where there's a bit of a kerfuffle. Then there'll be a point where we might be able to counter and we can work around that. And that is a hugely concerning thing for this team.
There was a point in the second half when Arnold had a free kick and it deflected off the wall and went for a corner. And we took that corner and we had 4 men in the box. So that's 4 in the box, 1 taking the corner, there's a keeper and there's 1 back. That's 7. So there's 4 players at a corner who are not in the box and who are not defending. And we actually get a chance from that, which is the chance where Thiago lays it off for Arnold, but they're both outside the box. So yeah, I'm not looking at corners at the moment as a kind of source of goals or anything. But in yesterday's game, we didn't need to, and this is why it's such a hard game to analyse in terms of systems, in terms of what Klopp's game plan was. Because we had more shots yesterday than we had against Palace, and we beat them 7-0. If you draw that game and you kind of freeze before every shot, you could legitimately say that, with the exception of Firmino, each striker could have a hat-trick there. On another day, Firmino's got 4 or 5 assists, and we are purring about the ball he plays to Salah for the one-on-one, about the pass through the legs to set up Mane for the one-on-one. So it's hard to really blame it from a system set-up point of view, because everything went according to plan, but no one could. But what have we got? 4 goals now in the last 135 shots. I mean, you just can't just forget it. There's nothing you can. There's like, what do you want to do? Create 270 shots to try and win a game 2-1? It's like just we're in an alternate reality, and I think sometimes that happens. It happened in that beach ball season, and I think the players get stuck in their heads. I think Steve's right. The first goal is just completely instinct. There's no one else around, and we score. But at any other point, Jesus, it's. But what can you do other than replacing the people who are missing the chances? I don't think you could have set up any better. You can't really blame the full-backs, the centre mids, or even a defence yesterday. It's just, you just can't win games of football when your conversion rate is that low. It's impossible.
They have these little sleep pod things in Japan, Ben, and I think about them all the time. When into one, and they give you a little bag, and they give you a little dressing gown and a set of lightweight pajamas and some slippers, toothpaste, toothbrush. You go in, you have a shower, you brush your teeth, you get into your pod, and it plays soothing music. Lovely, genuinely lovely. You sleep like you've never slept before in your life. And I am very committed that Liverpool find a way to get Sadio Mane into one of these pods for the last 4 weeks of the season, that they just put Sadio into a pod and say, lad, you just get your head down there. You just really, all you need to do is have the occasional bowl of noodles and walk between these spaces and sleep and rest and shower, because it is painful to watch him at the moment. Everything he does is just becoming more and more graft. I've never known a footballer who looks more inside his own head.
No, and that's the issue across the whole team. Sadio sort of, the lightning rod for that, but everyone else, all the forwards are in that. The only one who isn't is Salah, but I think Salah's performing fairly similar to how he's performed for Liverpool since he signed. He gets a chance, he bangs. He gets a chance, he misses. He's done that consistently. It's just that it didn't really matter then because we were boss at the back. So, if we got 1-0 up, we were fine. If he did miss a chance, it didn't matter because, as you say, we had a set piece threat. We scored. With the things that made this Liverpool team so good, and the reason that they've been able to improve incrementally year on year on year is that they've looked for all these little marginal gains. They've got set piece coaches in, throwing coaches in, this, that, the other. They've done all them improvements, and then this season, everything's just conspired to take all them improvements and say, right, okay, try it now, dickheads. How are you going to improve now when you can't do any of that stuff anymore? Like the inability to even head a ball off one of our corners is incredible. We're not even heading it over. We're not even getting there first. It's almost like it's just all a bit. And I said it before, football's a mindset. But Liverpool look very, very much like they just want the season to hurry up and fuck off. And as you say, go and have a kip in one of these little bed things. Because they look like they need a reset, all of them. Sadio no more than anyone, Sadio more than everybody else. But I think if you asked all the players, I think they're just fucking fed up. They've gone, if you think about it from their mindset, they've gone from being, Thiago signed to play for this team because it was so good. And he's been, he hasn't moved. Yeah, we had the choice of where he wanted to go. He hasn't moved to Liverpool because he wants to live by fucking Sefton Park. Do you know what I mean? He chose this footballing project because it was so interesting. He wants to learn. He plays under Guardiola. He wants to learn off all the best managers, the best players. And then he's arrived, and him and the rest of them have gone from having aspirations of winning the league and possibly the Champions League and being one of the best football teams, recent sides ever, to now scrapping round, looking at each other in an empty ground, almost saying, what's the fucking point in this here today? And it's almost got to that point now where it's just a little bit silly. And the only way it can stop being silly is just to have a break. Okay, well, we've got one coming up, lads. You can go and play in the Euros or go and just relax for a month and forget about playing pandemic football in an empty ground whereby everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Because Liverpool could play for another 100 games this season, but you've got no evidence to suggest that this trend won't carry on. We've seen it now every week, pretty much, various forms of it for 3 months, since we beat Palace and we were ruthless, and there's nothing to suggest that that's going to change. And if anything, what you can see is that Liverpool playing at Anfield, when it's empty, will end up with us having all the ball, either creating one or two really good chances and missing them and then getting diddles, or battering teams, or cocking up all your breaks, or whatever it is, just not being ruthless enough. And that, it's easy to say, well, it'll be fine when the crowds come back. But I almost feel like it probably will be. I almost feel like at this point, as soon as there's no crowds, or it's like, right, all them little things, what's happened the last 10 times we've been here, we've missed a load of chances, we've been diddles on the break. All them little doubts are just there, and it's in everyone's head, and they just need something to change. And that just might be, look, we're going to change some players. It might be, look, this time next year there's fans in, this time in 6 weeks there's fans in. But they need a new kit, fucking anything. Do you know what I mean? It just needs changes to the mentality. And the problem they've got at the minute is they've got no confidence in anything. They've got no confidence in the finishing, no confidence in not conceding ridiculous chances because we're not strong enough at the back. But then they've got no confidence in being able to sit in and just dig one out either. So they're just going about the business doing this 90% perfect model that just results in all the non-important stuff being really good, and then the really important stuff being non-existent, and it's just heartbreaking to watch, and it just needs to worry up and fuck off.
I've got one of those pods at work.
Have you?
Yeah, there's a room which is turned into a sleep pod. It's got about 50 cushions in it, and everyone's too scared to use it in case they get sacked.
A really anxious sleep.
But it's there. It's there though as a sort of well-being sleep pod room. But what are you going to do? Just like get off at 1 o'clock and come back at 5? What have you done? Yeah. What have you done? I had a kip in a sleeping pod. You put it there.
Okay, putting aside 21st century corporate values, Steve, and Ben Johnson's impugning the draw of the ink in the well and South Liverpool's many parks and leafy boulevards. The question there is, as sort of phrased by Ben, and it does accelerate me through this, but we can come back and talk about other bits in a minute. Liverpool, the question that I think is going to be on everyone's lips is whether or not Liverpool needs to do a root and branch overhaul. The thing about doing a root and branch overhaul now is that you might be ending up doing it from a Europa League position, which, as we know more than any time this week, that's got financial connotations across other things, so you couldn't pick a worse moment for that. But the flip side is, and I completely take Ben's point, and I think I'm sort of broadly in agreement with it, but making an argument to hold the course is really, really hard when the car keeps fucking crashing itself. And you know, we can do you hold the course, the players come back, the fans come back. You know, the two Mikes and Jurgen, they know what they're about. Jordan Henderson makes a massive difference because I think he actually now captains the world. There's all these little bits and pieces that will make a difference, that will improve it. Honestly, you don't have to worry about it. It's really hard to make that argument when it keeps running into the harsh reality of these football matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing you do is if you're looking to get your signings done, get them done now. I get a feeling like Konate's not checked the league table yet. He's like, oh, sound. So if you can get them to, if we're looking to do, Lewandowski or something in the summer, or Mbappe, then just maybe get it done now. But I think other than that, it will. Yeah, the likelihood is that we're looking at Europa League, although I think it hasn't gone all of that, which is I almost wish it just would, because it's going to be a painful couple of weeks, I think, in which we beat Manchester United and then stumble again. You can have that one for free. I think I am broadly of the view that we'd almost be more likely to make significant changes if we had won the league or finished a few points off City in second. Whereas this, for reasons of, firstly, the sort of desirability of our players on the wider market has fallen in a number of cases, not Salah, but some of the others, I think, who you might have been worried about losing. That's not a good thing, but that could, again, that's the sort of unintended consequence could be that Liverpool keep this group together for a year longer than they might otherwise have. This group is getting older, has been. That's been on the radar for a little while. They're going to need to bring in some new blood somewhere. Some of the younger players of a younger profile who were sort of meant to be at the level when they came in, like Naby Keita hasn't worked out. Jota has. So it's probably a couple of signings and then we go again. I think there isn't an obvious quality overhaul that you would. I mean, which of that front four are you? I think there's an ongoing Firmino debate. I don't think that Mane is doing anything differently in terms of pace or strength or any of the things that would go with age. I think it is, as you say, there's just a lot of sort of mentality issue there in terms of he's almost just trying too hard and he just needs that time off. But the downside of that whole, like, let's just look at next season, is that next season might only offer us one chance to win something that we really care about. And that's the thing for me is you don't start the season with two things that you have a parade for, or you certainly that you have a parade that isn't slightly mocked by other people for. You start with just one, which I think we'd be we'd still be good contenders for, but you're also looking at Chelsea, having a resurgence. United will probably still be there or thereabouts. Manchester City are going to spend huge amounts of money under the guise of needing to replace Sergio Aguero, which isn't necessarily the most pressing issue for them, but they will obviously invest more now. So yeah, it's going to be a tough few weeks. I think the manager is saying the right things, the things about it will come right, it will come together, because what else can he say? Particularly when he looks at them executing his plan pretty well. They've all just been so. I mean, I think the key moment mentality wise was the derby, but the problem, the away derby. But the problem for them is that it didn't hit them straight away, and it took a little while, and that's even almost like the worst of all worlds, because we didn't move to address the seriousness of that situation anywhere near quickly enough, and then we ended up with the situation that we had with bringing in 2 centre backs, one of whom the manager doesn't fancy, doesn't want to have near the first team. So yeah, it's not been an ideal confluence of circumstances, but I think we'll all just feel a lot better when the season's finished. We can go into a relatively normal pre-season, notwithstanding the Euros getting in the way of all of that as well. But something that feels a little bit normal, I don't know, we'll go to like Swindon away or something and look quite good, and then just start it again and see where we are, and hopefully be in the ground. And I think one thing that people talk about a lot is we miss the support. I think we miss a little bit of the tension between the manager and the crowd sometimes. I think there's times when he's fed off, people around him going, because I mean, it happens around me every time he's made that change late on with the centre half. People go, this never works. And you're like, well, we're 58 games unbeaten at home at this point. So I think it does. Like, it genuinely does. And lots of things that you almost, in the nicest possible way, I think he's quite happy to prove his point to the crowd at times, particularly the main stand around him. And I think he just doesn't have any of that to draw on at the minute.
I think just, Martin, I like Steve's final point there. Is something that is quite interesting when we do talk about the crowd, that people do sort of think, well, do they just need people to cheer? I think it is the whole gamut of what crowds actually are. I think they're a football team that have been built for dramatic tension. They've been built for the lows as much as for the highs. They've been built for those sorts of intakes of breath around them. And they've been built to kick back against a home crowd, kick against an away crowd. And I do think that and everyone will always say, so why doesn't that get anyone else? But it's because I think in part, well, I think it has been getting other people as well, but I think it's also in part because that's sort of what an identity that he's looked to have within them. That he's not just gone for the best footballers, he's gone for the best footballers that he thinks can play at Anfield. He's not just gone for the ones that are, that all gleam and glisten and slide in and out of situations. He's gone for ones that have got a bit of tooth written about them, a bit of a rough to go with the smooth. And I do think that they are missing that a little bit, but that rough can go when things are this bad for this long, and that's what worries me. And when you are talking about root and branch stuff, when you are talking about what's right or wrong, it is possible that this Liverpool side as a whole, or some of these Liverpool players, never quite get over this.
Yeah, only other people that these footballers are seeing at the moment are the opposing players, right? They're the only other people that they come into contact with, and everyone's had their own experience of lockdown, but we all know what it's like. It can get lonely, and you bump into someone that you kind of know, and you have a longer chat with them than you normally would. And I think there's an impact here, which is probably why there's less red cards this season. Is that what fans do is they provide an adversarial atmosphere which is disadvantageous to the away 11. It's obvious. This I'm not. This is not rocket science. But when you take that away and you throw in a situation where the players don't meet anyone else except other players, it's the opposite of a adversarial situation. They're almost pleased to see each other. And I think, we are, yet to understand the impact of this. And I think the reason why it's fairly unique to Liverpool is that what those players should have been hearing all year is 55,000 people singing about us being the champions. And that those players did something that all of the great players in the last 30 years didn't do, right? They achieved their place in history. They became legends. Some of them may never play in front of a crowd again at Anfield. And it is impossible at this stage to even understand the effect that must have on any professional in any field who has tried to achieve something and never gets their moment in the sun. And I think that's so hard to. It's tragic. It's genuinely tragic that someone like Genie could move on, and he just never gets that he did it in isolation. He did it in a vacuum, and the other players must all feel that. And then the only people they see when they turn up is a bunch of Newcastle players. And I'm not saying that because, as we said before, the game plan worked and then they should have won the game. But there's an edge that isn't there. And that edge benefits those players. And, that edge this season would have been extra special. And it's just not there.
I think, going back to you with it, Ben, other times being able to replicate that edge, they found it one way or another. The next game might sort of suit them in that they're going to Old Trafford, and Old Trafford doesn't get to have its edge. We do well there in the Cup earlier this season. We have hard lines in the end. United win it 3-2. Steve said before the top four thing still isn't gone, and he's probably right to say so. And he also says that it'd be quite nice if it just was, and he's probably also right to say that. But they've now got to win 5. If they're going to do it, they're going to win 5 out of 5. One of those is against Manchester United, and the other 4 are against sides that are in the bottom 8, and they've only won 3 games against sides that currently reside in the bottom 8 all season. Part of why I do think they should be looking to stay the course is because actually that's something that's relatively straightforward to fix. We're not looking at a team that can't deal with the better sides. We're looking at a side that was brilliant against the poorer teams, now hasn't been. If there's an easier team to beat, you would have thought it was the poorer ones than the harder ones. But they've got to go to Old Trafford and start a campaign where they do take 5 out of 5. That's got to be the absolute sole focus.
Yeah, they need to be perfect. I think it's an easier game at Old Trafford, obviously, and for the same reasons Martin's been discussing about Anfield being easy to attend. Then it's easier for Liverpool. That's the one ground this Liverpool side hasn't really been comfortable playing at. We get a draw last year. We sort of deserve it, but we don't really ever look like winning the game. And then aside from that, pretty much we've been crap whenever we've gone there.
Apart from the Europa League game.
So yeah, it makes it a bit easier. But as you say, that's not the issue for this side. These type of games aren't really the issue for this side. The issue for this side is what are you going to do when you then play West Brom? Probably get beat 1-0 or draw 1-1 or be winning 1-0 and they equal. Whatever it is, that's the issue. And I think they need to do a bit of soul searching at the end of the season. And I think they will be having that conversation. Okay, well, how much of what we've lost can we just get back? Just like that, by starting afresh with proper defenders and with everyone settling down a little bit. And where can we improve and what do we need to improve against? And I think they're the things they need to focus on. They need to improve against that low 7-man defence where they just sit in the penalty area. We need to improve what we do because, all right, yesterday we created loads of chances and missed loads of chances. And against Newcastle away, we created loads of chances and missed loads of chances. But in a fair few of the games where we've got beat at home, we've created some decent half chances, but not massive, big standout stuff in some of them. So we need to have a solution for that, and I think they will have an eye on some of the underperformance of some of the forwards. I think they've got to. I think they're right to. And I think, but the other thing is, I think they also need to have a look at why they don't trust anyone else to impact the game of footy, as Steve said before. What is that? And if you're going to keep them players at the club, okay, you can't sell all of them. we need to sell some of them and get ones who you do trust, because otherwise, what's the point in having any subs? If you, when you're only bringing them on is for like a bit of a Hail Mary, let's see if you can do something mad. But if you don't trust them to actually change the course of a game properly, what's the point in having them? In terms of the rest of the season, yeah, they've got to win 5-on-5. I just don't see it. I don't see us having the mindset or, frankly, the fucking luck to do it this season. I just don't see that changing anytime soon. You know, in terms of going forward next year, yeah, it'll be crap not being in the Champions League, but it's almost, you know, if Liverpool win in the Champions League next season and we didn't do too much of a change, we just changed a few squad players, I'd fancy us to come out fucking raging with everyone and determined. I think the management staff will spend the summer saying, you need to prove yourselves. We put this team together. You've been shite last year. Wasn't really your fault, but it doesn't matter. And one of the things Klopp says yesterday, which is interesting, is he references that it's too easy. He says we're weak. I think he uses the word weak, and I think everything else he says, look, we create chances from missing them. It happens. The goal, that happens, but he says it's too easy. And he references that, and I think that's the thing that they'll be looking at. Why is this attitude gone to shit? What can we do to instill a stronger attitude? And I think that's what they'll be working at, and that's what they need.
It is too easy for Newcastle at times, Martin. Newcastle are ultimately a bit of a bag of shite. Saint-Maximin's very dangerous, and he does really well first off. He's almost a one-man attack. They counter relatively well through the game. It is the one strategy. Now, listen, we'd do much better if we had the boss centre-halves and Fabinho in centre-mid. But that's the only thing Newcastle have got, and Liverpool never quite get to grips with it. And that, you know, they do just find it a bit too straightforward. Newcastle, I think Liverpool are happy to an extent to take that gamble, but I think they are finding it a little bit too straightforward through the course of that game, Newcastle, at times, to be able to just get the ball 80 yards up the pitch.
Yeah, we obviously played a very high line yesterday. There was a bunch of times they got in behind, a couple were offside, but a couple weren't. Alisson makes a decent save from Longstaff in the first half. Joe Linton gets through against Alisson. He makes another decent save in the second half. So it's not like they didn't have chances, right? I mean, and also it isn't like they didn't that they had to do a lot in order to create a chance. They had to put it in the space behind our centre backs. For you know, one of their willing runners. The bit that's concerning though is just the end of the game. And once they brought Milner on, I mean, people on the commentary were saying it's a sensible thing to do, it's going to shore things up, but to me it just kind of set the tone for what was going to happen, which was we're going to try and hang on against Newcastle at home and try and win this 1-0. And the just lack of energy and nous in the last 15 was just terrible. There's a bit where Curtis Jones has the ball, I think in extra time, in injury time, and he just gives it away really sloppily. And I think they have their disallowed goal from that. They have a bunch of throw-ins where we're not quick to the ball. We have the for the first time really, apart from maybe Spurs at home, we kind of get a VAR that, you know, goes for us, and it's weird, right? I just think that should have been a goal, but of course you take it, and then they put a cross into the smallest player on the pitch. He wins a header. It goes down to Willock. Obviously he's unmarked. He shoots. It gets a deflection. And obviously that goes in the goal. and at what point do you think, I can't watch any more of this? It's killing me. And I think, like, it wasn't a case of keeping it in the corner flag. I mean, it would have been good to get in their half, let alone down to the corner flag and keep it there. There was no sense of that. If you are going to bring on Milner, if you are going to, you know, try and hold on to 1-0, well then I didn't see any of the things associated with that, like trying to break up play trying to knock the ball long for maybe someone like Origi, but for anyone else. I didn't see any sense of that at all. I just saw us go further and further back.
They looked almost dizzy to me, Steve. They looked like they didn't almost know where the ball was at times in that sort of last sort of 3-minute spell. And I couldn't see how they thought they were getting out and who they thought was holding it up for them. It was a really curious little passage of play where Liverpool are eventually punished twice, once allowed off the hook. And it doesn't feel like they learn a lesson. It doesn't help that, fuck me, the BT coverage was awful. I think one of the reasons why I found it dizzying was I felt like I was never watching the core part of the football match. I don't know how lots of bits of this play sort of developed, other than the fact that they would suddenly have a throw in our territory and we looked like we weren't prepped for it, like we ourselves had cut to someone's face. It was difficult to sort of perceive exactly what was happening there. It was one to be in the ground for. But Liverpool just do not get to grips with what's happening with 3 minutes to go. And I think part of the problem is if you'd have offered Steve Bruce before a ball was kicked, let alone at 1-0, it'll be 1-0 on 85 and you can bring Dwight Gale on. He would have said sound. It was like it had played into Newcastle's hands. They knew exactly what reality was. We had no idea.
Yeah, and we've done that time and time again. And, giving sides like West Brom and others, Leeds on Monday, their dream, which is the chance to score a late goal, and those are different sides with different approaches, but it's consistent from sides from sort of 7th down. That's pretty much going to be the most they should expect at Liverpool or Manchester City or the really tough places to go. It was like there was no one who could see the big picture. No one could see. I think before the chance is created, there's kind of a couple of occasions where Robertson wins it out on the flank, makes interceptions, but you almost just feel like he needs to just launch the ball into their half, because we're on 90+5 at that point. We're on the point where it's almost certain that if the ball goes back towards their goalkeeper or towards their commanding centre half, John Joe Shelvey, it is ultimately then going to be launched up in the air and the referee will blow his whistle. The referee will blow his whistle, and that'll be that. And that is, you're watching it at home, and I suppose the thing you do sometimes forget is they haven't got the little clock in the corner of the screen. Maybe they've got, even on the scoreboard, it's not exact, is it, down to the seconds. So you're asking them to play a situation that they're having to guess a little bit at, I guess, just exactly how long is left. But they know that ball can't just come back.
Sorry, go on, Steve. Sorry.
So Liverpool are competing. The two centre halves are there, sliding in to make the block together. They're very close to one another. You just can't see how that's all happened. How's that worked out? I mean, I agree with you about the direction on BT. It was in the first half as well when we were creating two chances a minute, and they were sort of lingering on the replays, and you sometimes just have to let the first replay go to allow the next passage of play to be shown, don't you? In the grounds, it just feels like it's the kind of thing that just wouldn't stand, because just somehow a collective force of will, and also perhaps also picking up again. I mean, this is another thing perhaps as well, just picking up from the crowd exactly where you're at in the game. Whereas you're relying on 11 different people with 11 different brains all to sort of think collectively, and sometimes it needs maybe 54,000 of us to do that.
I forgot all about the John J. Shelvey at centre half.
We didn't even want to test him. We put him under no pressure whatsoever.
If you talk about, Neil, the terms of the deal done with the devil, there's a clause fucking 73. Newcastle can put John J. Shelvey at centre half for the last 20 minutes and we're still going to win. Okay, all right, yeah, do that. Can you think? It's the maddest thing I've ever seen since John J. Shelvey playing midfield. It's absolutely fucking bonkers, and it worked. And it's just there comes a point where serious analysis is difficult when that sort of thing is happening, and you see it, and I don't know. Yeah, forgot about that.
John Joe Shelvey at centre half. Okay, then. That is possibly the title for the show. Thank you very much to Ben Johnson, to Steve Graves, to Martin Fitzgerald. We are all in this thing together. We're in it right now for 5-6 more games, and then we're in it next season to come roaring back and prove a point somewhere. By God, Liverpool come roaring back, because the alternative is not great. Thank you very much to everyone. Thanks to you for listening. Take it easy.